Hey everyone, welcome back. Today we're diving deep into a story that blew up the sports world, the catastrophic downfall of Shilo Sanders. Now, you might think you know this story, the sideline punch, the lifetime ban, the whole 9 yards. But trust me, you don't know the half of it. What if I told you that the brawl that ended his career wasn't just a simple moment of frustration, but the final explosion in a decade-long saga of violence, family drama, and entitlement that has shadowed his entire life? What if I showed you the court documents from an incident that left a man with a broken neck, and how Shilo tried to use bankruptcy to simply wash it away? That explosive sideline brawl? Shilo knows better. He knows he can't do a situation like that, especially not under the lights of an NFL preseason game. And after it, the league came down with the harshest punishment possible. Shilo Sanders, banned for life. And let's not forget, this wasn't his first meltdown under the lights, but it was definitely the most catastrophic one yet. The real shocker though, seconds after the ban dropped, Sanders pulled a move so wild it might go down as the most infamous moment of his short career. That's the tight end, Zach Davidson. That preseason was supposed to be the comeback. Shilo, just 25 years old, son of Hall of Fame legend Deion Sanders, finally had his golden ticket. After going undrafted and overlooked, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers handed him a chance. A 3-year deal worth $2.5 million with over $800,000 locked in for year 1. It was his shot to build a name beyond his father's shadow. But instead, on August 23rd, 2025, inside Raymond James Stadium during a low-stakes preseason finale against the Buffalo Bills, his NFL dreams went up in smoke. The Bucs were trailing in the second quarter of what ended as a 23-19 loss when Bills tight end Zach Davidson, towering at 6'7" and 251 lbs of straight muscle, zeroed in on Sanders. What should have been a simple block turned into flat-out embarrassment. Davidson kept plowing Sanders downfield even after the whistle, shoving him nearly 15 yards like a rag doll in front of the home crowd. Sometimes your last name can be a blessing and a curse. It's not normal that free agents have breaking news that they're being released. He's an undrafted free agent, and because his name is Sanders, the blessing and the curse. People said, well, Shannon, he only got an opportunity because his last name is Sanders. The clips hit social media in seconds. Davidson yanking Shilo by the helmet, swinging his arm past his head, forcing him into a crouch, while fans swore they saw him laughing mid-play. That humiliation was the final straw for a safety already known for reckless behavior since his college days. And then came the career-ending mistake. After one last shove, Sanders snapped. He popped up from the turf and let loose. Some say it was a full-on punch, others call it a slap. But either way, he smacked Davidson's helmet on live television. The refs didn't hesitate. Flag thrown, game ejection. His reputation shredded in real time. Buccaneers linebacker John Bullock tried to pull him back and calm him down, but it was pointless. The damage was done, to Tampa's defense, to Sanders' dignity, and to his NFL future. And while Shilo was walking off in disgrace, Davidson didn't just get away clean. He added insult to injury. No penalty, no warning, nothing, and violent. And I said, give me the phone. I'm not playing with you. Give me the phone. And so I reach, I grab his arm, and I don't grab it hard. I just try to stop him because he looks like he's about to walk out of the building. So I put my hand on his arm and he jerks away like really hard and he grazes. Replays even caught him hooking his fingers inside Shilo's face mask seconds before the blow, but the officials looked the other way. Instead, Davidson turned around and mocked Sanders with a too small taunt, hyping up the stadium as the Bucs unraveled. To make it sting worse, that penalty set Buffalo up with 1st and 10 at Tampa's 11-yard line. And on the very next snap, Tyrell Shavers pulled off a highlight reel, one-handed touchdown grab. One meltdown from Sanders had cost the Bucs 7 points, his pride, and his last lifeline in the league. Head coach Todd Bowles didn't mince words afterward. Known for his strict defensive culture and no-nonsense approach, Bowles tore into Sanders during the post-game presser, calling the ejection flat-out inexcusable. That statement slammed the door shut because Sanders wasn't just fighting for a role. He was clinging to the final safety spot behind stars like Antoine Winfield Jr. Now that dream was gone before it even started. The fallout was cold and ruthless. Less than 24 hours later, August 24th, 2025, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers kicked Shilo Sanders to the curb during their mandatory roster cuts. On paper, the team brushed it off as standard preseason evaluations, but come on, the timing screamed otherwise. His NFL dream wasn't just slipping, it was buried before it could even breathe. Shilo is a man of many talents. I don't know if you guys know, he's a man of many talents. And he's going to be straight. All the Sanders are going to be straight with or without football. You better believe that. And here's the wild twist. Shilo wasn't riding with rookie agents. He was backed by Drew Rosenhaus and Robert Bailey, two of the most notorious dealmakers in the league. Rosenhaus, famous for his next question swagger and his iron grip over NFL front offices, has saved countless careers with nothing but pure hustle. But even with that powerhouse duo fighting in his corner, they couldn't rescue Sanders from getting tossed aside like broken gear. Still, they tried to spin it. His camp pushed out frantic statements, pleading with other teams to grab him off waivers or at least stash him on a practice squad. They leaned hard on the Sanders name, selling his bloodline, his raw athletic tools, and that untapped upside label scouts love to hear. But the harder they pushed, the clearer it got. Shilo wasn't swimming, he was sinking fast, and no team wanted to dive in after him. The football world wasted no time piling on. Analysts torched him on air, and ex-players dragged him across social feeds, pointing at his underwhelming preseason numbers. Just 4 solo tackles and a single quarterback hit in 3 games. To them, this wasn't one bad punch. It was proof he wasn't special. The punch just gave Tampa the clean excuse to move on without looking back. But not everyone bought that simple story. Some critics zoomed out, arguing this meltdown exposed cracks in the Sanders dynasty itself, the family style of discipline, their approach to accountability. It's been questioned for years, and Shilo's implosion poured gasoline on that fire. Detractors called it entitlement, the ugly side of growing up in privilege with fame as a shield. Supporters clapped back, saying he was being targeted because of his last name, that if it were anyone else throwing that slap, the league would have brushed it off and moved on. And once people started pulling back the layers, it became clear this wasn't just one wild meltdown. This was a pattern, a track record of violence, dysfunction, and family drama that had been shadowing Shilo Sanders for years. That August 2025 punch wasn't some slip-up in the heat of the moment. It was the latest chapter in a messy saga that started way before the NFL ever looked his way. To really understand how someone born into money, fame, and opportunity could blow it all up so spectacularly, you've got to rewind to one of the darkest turning points in his life. The date, September 17th, 2015. Shilo was only 15, and the incident still hangs over him today. The setting was Focus Academies, also called AAA Academy, in Dallas, Texas, a private school where his father, Deion Sanders, was both CEO and head football coach. What should have been a small issue over breaking the no-phone rule spiraled into a nightmare that's still tied to Shilo's name. That day, Shilo was already sitting in-school suspension for disrupting class. Instead of keeping quiet, he was on his phone, reaching out to his mom, Pilar Sanders, in the middle of his parents' nasty divorce. When campus security guard John Darren, a 48-year-old ex-ball player, moved in to take the phone under Deion's orders, chaos exploded. Witnesses say Shilo lashed out, and the result was brutal. Darren ended up in an ambulance, suffering a broken neck, spinal injuries, and permanent neurological damage. Doctors fused 5 levels of his spine together. He's been on disability checks ever since, dealing with non-stop treatments, painful complications, and the shadow of more surgeries ahead. All this just for trying to enforce a simple school rule. On Deion's own request, the investigations that followed only added fuel to the fire. Review after review pointed the finger at Shilo. 4 out of 5 rulings said he was responsible. Then came the bombshell. In 2022, a Texas court officially declared, on September 17th, 2015, Shilo Sanders did in fact cause physical harm and injuries to John Darren, and the damages were a foreseeable result of his assault. No spin, no excuses. That's the official record. But instead of owning up, Shilo and his family dragged the case out for years, ducking accountability with every legal trick in the book. By March 2022, the trial finally hit, and Shilo didn't even show up. He claimed he never got the notice because of an old address and said he couldn't afford an attorney. By October 2023, he was drowning in fallout and tried to wash it all away by filing Chapter 7 bankruptcy in Colorado. The move shocked everyone. This wasn't a broke nobody. His family had money, and Shilo himself had NIL deals estimated at $1.1 million, yet here he was, begging the courts to wipe away debt from the assault case. The filings made things worse. First, he listed assets of $400,000, then changed it down to $320,000. On the sheet, a $75,000 Mercedes and $75,000 worth of jewelry. Critics went crazy, accusing him of hiding money in shell companies and downplaying his NIL cash to slide out clean. Darren's lawyer came back swinging, insisting the debt was from a willful and malicious injury, meaning by law, it couldn't just disappear in bankruptcy. Then came reports that Shilo was still spending big, flexing while claiming he was broke. It painted him as reckless, entitled, and desperate all at once. And don't think that was just old history. On the field, Shilo kept stacking up a reputation that haunted him. At Colorado, he was branded as a dirty hitter, piling up late shots that made rivals furious. The breaking point came October 12, 2024 against Kansas State. Fresh off a broken forearm comeback, Shilo had a chance at redemption, but instead delivered disaster. He blew coverages, missed tackles, and looked so lost that even his own father, Coach Deion Sanders, called him out as horrible and rusty. But what really set fans off was yet another late dangerous hit, this time on running back DJ Giddens. Viewers swore it could have ended the man's career. By then, Shilo wasn't just struggling, he was branded reckless for life. And the chaos didn't end when the clock ran out. Off the field, Shilo's mouth was just as dangerous as his hits. Before the 2023 Oregon matchup, cameras caught him barking at opponents, screaming, "I'll beat the brains out of every one of you and your coach." A chilling line, especially when you stack it against his long history of real-life violence. But if you trace it back, the roots of his downfall didn't just come from football, they came from home. Shilo was raised in turmoil. Deion and Pilar Sanders went through one of the ugliest divorces the celebrity world had ever seen. Courtroom showdowns, custody wars, and accusations that made headlines coast to coast. In 2012, things hit rock bottom when Pilar was arrested after allegedly attacking Deion inside their Prosper, Texas home, while 12-year-old Shilo was caught right in the middle of the storm. Divorce filings painted a picture of non-stop chaos. Both parents throwing accusations, each claiming the other was unfit to raise the kids. For Shilo, dysfunction wasn't a phase, it was everyday life. Confrontation became his normal, and Deion's influence can't be overlooked. At first, primetime-backed school security guard John Darren after the 2015 assault incident. But then he flipped the script. Deion called Darren a grifter and even leaked a chopped-up video to TMZ to paint Shilo as the victim. That type of cover-up, no matter how slick, sent the message to Shilo loud and clear. Rules don't apply when your last name is Sanders. The ghost of that moment never left. Darren was left paralyzed financially and physically, clinging to an $11.89 million judgment against Shilo. In interviews, he admitted he wanted Shilo to shine in the NFL, not out of forgiveness, but because the bigger Shilo's paycheck, the better chance of actually collecting that money. Imagine that, your victim praying for your success, while you're out there torching your own future. On the field, the same cracks kept showing. Teammates and coaches whispered about his reckless late hits, his sideline temper, and his complete lack of composure under pressure. Those whispers turned into warnings by draft season, and when the draft came, the verdict was clear. No one was willing to gamble. Even with his last name, even with his athletic bloodline, Shilo went undrafted. That wasn't bad luck. It was the league making a statement, "We don't trust you." And the family reaction? It didn't calm anything down. Instead of tackling the source of his anger, the Sanders camp doubled down, spinning excuses, pointing fingers, and pushing the narrative that Shilo was a victim of bias. To outsiders, it didn't look like protection. It looked like enabling. It was a cycle that set the stage for the NFL implosion we all saw years later. But to really understand why that August 2025 punch became the final straw, you've got to rewind to the very beginning, the golden setup he was born into. Shilo Sanders wasn't just another kid chasing the league. Born February 9th, 2000, he entered one of the most legendary bloodlines in sports history. From day one, he had the money, the access, the genetics, and a last name that carried instant power. His father, Deion Primetime Sanders, wasn't just a former NFL player. He was an icon. 2 Super Bowl rings, 8 Pro Bowls, and the rare flex of competing in both the Super Bowl and the World Series. His mother, Pilar Sanders, wasn't a quiet figure either. She had her own shine as a model and actress. Shilo grew up under bright lights, where the pressure wasn't to succeed, it was to dominate. And worse than the weak stat line were the old demons creeping right back in. The temper, the reckless hits, the zero discipline. It all blew up on October 12th, 2024 against Kansas State. That game was supposed to be his big redemption moment. moment, his comeback from a broken forearm injury. Instead, it turned into one of the ugliest chapters of his entire college career. The humiliation of going undrafted cut so deep that Shilo even joked about firing his own father as his agent. But there was truth behind the laugh. He turned around and hired NFL super agent Drew Rosenhaus in a last-ditch attempt to salvage his pro dreams. It was a desperate play, and it exposed just how far his stock had really fallen. So when the Tampa Bay Buccaneers finally scooped him up as an undrafted free agent, the headlines looked flashy. 3 years, $2.5 million with $800,000 guaranteed. On paper, it felt like a lifeline. But behind the scenes, everyone knew the truth. This wasn't confidence. It was a gamble. The Bucs were basically testing if head coach Todd Bowles' strict, no-nonsense culture could clean up a player with red flags stamped all over him. And then came the preseason reality check. Across 3 games, Shilo managed just 4 solo tackles and a single quarterback hit. No highlight moments, no real impact, just a guy struggling to prove he even belonged on the depth chart. And it didn't help that he was fighting for scraps against names like Kayvon Merriweather and Rashad Wisdom, all for the final safety spot behind superstar Antoine Winfield Jr. That's the true tragedy of Shilo Sanders. He wasn't some underdog clawing his way to the top. He was born into privilege, connections, and opportunity that most players would kill for. Yet over and over, he managed to sabotage himself, burning every bridge before he ever had the chance to cross it. What do you think? Was Shilo doomed from the start, or could better discipline and accountability have saved his career? Drop your thoughts in the comments, smash that like button, and don't forget to subscribe for more stories like this.